Ultimatum. When Marvel dropped Ultimatum in 2009, it was supposed to be a blockbuster crossover that shook the Ultimate Universe. Instead, it became infamous, a blood-soaked disaster fans still bring up when talking about comics that went way too far. The story opens with Magneto hijacking the Earth's magnetic poles after losing his children, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. His revenge triggers tsunamis, earthquakes, and mass destruction across the globe. Entire cities are wiped off the map in just a few panels, and what follows is less superhero adventure and more horror show. Major heroes are picked off with gruesome efficiency. Doctor Strange is strangled with his own cape. Daredevil dies off panel, leaving only his mask behind. And in one of the most shocking scenes in Marvel history, Blob devours the Wasp's corpse before Hank Pym decapitates him in a fit of rage. Captain America, Thor, Cyclops, and dozens more fall in brutal fashion. It felt less like Marvel Comics and more like a disaster movie gone feral. The backlash was immediate. Fans accused the creative team of turning shock value into a plot device. Characters that had been built up for nearly a decade were wiped out in pages, often without any payoff. The series' attempt to redefine the Ultimate line backfired so badly that it effectively collapsed the universe it was meant to save. Punisher Max. If you want to understand why Frank Castle will never headline a Disney Plus blockbuster, you've got to look at his Max stories. Marvel let Garth Ennis off the leash, and the result wasn't the Punisher as a tragic anti-hero, it was Frank as a monster born for war. In Born, 2003, the curtain pulls back on Castle's Vietnam days. He's not the broken man who snapped after losing his family. The truth is darker. Frank thrived in combat, addicted to the blood and chaos of the battlefield. The war didn't break him, it gave him purpose. Ennis paints him as a soldier who doesn't want peace, who already craved endless conflict before the skull ever hit his chest. Then came The Slavers, 2005-6, and even by Punisher standards, it was brutal. Frank discovers an underground ring, trafficking women across Eastern Europe, with every crime spelled out in chilling detail. There are no compromises, no tidy victories. Castle takes the only road he knows, merciless execution. The pages show him dismantling the ring piece by piece, using fear and violence so raw that readers questioned whether this was even still a superhero book. These arcs cemented Punisher Max as Marvel's darkest corner. They weren't about flashy villains or colorful battles. They were about war crimes, human misery, and one man so consumed by violence that there was no way back. That's why the MCU can never adapt this version. You can slap Frank Castle on a t-shirt or give him a TV cameo, but the real Punisher, the one born in the mud of Vietnam and unleashed on human traffickers, is far too savage for Disney's polished universe. Wolverine, Enemy of the State. In 2004, Marvel dropped Enemy of the State, a Wolverine arc that turned the world's most popular X-Man into the deadliest villain on the board. Written by Mark Miller with art by John Romita Jr., it ran for 12 issues and pulled no punches. The story starts with Wolverine tracking down a kidnapped child in Japan, but the mission takes a sharp turn when he's ambushed by the Hand and Hydra. They not only beat him, but also brainwash him. The result was a Wolverine stripped of restraint and loyalty, unleashed as the perfect weapon. From that point on, Logan goes on a killing spree that makes the rest of the Marvel Universe panic. He slices through SHIELD agents, targets old allies, and racks up a body count across cities. It was the nightmare scenario, Wolverine as a programmed assassin, unstoppable and merciless. The arc dug deep into the fear of what Logan could become if his humanity was stripped away. He was always a killer with claws, but this series forced readers to imagine a Marvel world where Wolverine was embracing it under Hydra's control. Eventually, SHIELD and Elektra managed to break the programming, but not before Logan leaves behind a trail of blood and guilt that sticks with him. Undeniably, the hero wasn't protecting the world, but its greatest threat. Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe. In 2012, Marvel greenlit one of its wildest what-if style stories, Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe, written by Cullen Bunn. The premise sounds like a joke, but the execution is pure horror. It's Deadpool unleashed with no filters, turning on every hero and villain in Marvel history. The story kicks off with Wade Wilson under the care of a psychiatrist, except the Doctor isn't who he seems. He's Psycho Man, a classic Fantastic Four villain trying to brainwash Deadpool into becoming his personal weapon. The experiment goes wrong. Instead of serving his master, Deadpool's mind fractures even further, and he comes to one terrifying realization. He and everyone around him are fictional characters trapped in a cycle of endless suffering. His answer? End the cycle by killing everyone. The kills come fast and grotesque. The The Fantastic Four are among his first victims, with Deadpool lobotomizing Reed Richards. Spider-Man is stabbed through the skull in an ambush. He tricks the Hulk into reverting to Bruce Banner, then decapitates him in his sleep. Even heavyweights like Thor and Wolverine fall to Wade's relentless assault. By the end, he's mowed down the Avengers, the X-Men, and practically every corner of Marvel's roster. What makes the story hit harder is its meta edge. Deadpool breaks the fourth wall constantly, aware that his rampage is as much against Marvel itself as it is against the characters. In the closing scene, he even confronts the comic's own creative team, suggesting he's going to come for the readers next. Fans were split. Some loved the sheer audacity, others felt it was shock value dialed to 11. But there's no denying it. This series showed a Deadpool too brutal, too nihilistic, and too self-aware for the family-friendly MCU. Old Man Logan? Mark Millar's Old Man Logan hit shelves in 2008, and readers quickly realized this wasn't the Wolverine they knew. It's set 50 years in the future, in a world where the villains have already won. America is carved up like a crime syndicate map, with Red Skull, Doom, Kingpin, and even the Hulk clan ruling their territories. Logan is introduced living on a farm with his wife and kids, swearing off violence after a tragedy that broke him beyond repair. That tragedy is revealed midway through the story. Under Mysterio's illusions, Wolverine slaughtered the entire X-Men, thinking they were enemies. The guilt is so heavy that Logan vows never to unsheath his claws again. The rest of the story is a road trip through Nightmare America. Hawkeye, now blind, drives Logan across the wasteland to deliver a mysterious package. Along the way, readers get one shocking tableau after another. The Red Skull has turned Captain America's uniform into a trophy in his war museum. The Kingpin runs his empire from a fortress in the desert, and the Hulk family, Masim, a gang of grotesque, inbred hillbilly Hulks, rule over the western lands through terror and cannibalism. When Logan finally breaks his vow, it's explosive. Red Skull is decapitated, the Hulks are massacred, and Wolverine carves a path of blood that reminds readers why he's one of Marvel's most feared characters. The story ends with Logan surviving the wasteland, but fully embracing the role of killer once more. Old Man Logan is now a cult classic, inspiring parts of the 2017 film Logan. But the comic's sheer brutality, incestuous Hulks, slaughtered X-Men, and an America ruled by villains. Marvel Zombies. When Robert Kirkman, yes, the same guy behind The Walking Dead, got the keys to Marvel's sandbox in 2005, he unleashed one of the most grotesque storylines the company had ever printed, Marvel Zombies. It was set in an alternate universe where Earth's mightiest heroes weren't protectors anymore. They were starving corpses with superpowers. The infection starts fast and spreads faster. Once bitten, heroes keep their intelligence but lose all restraint, consumed by an endless hunger. The panels are shocking from the jump. Spider-Man eats Aunt May and Mary Jane while fully conscious of what he's doing. Captain America's skull is literally bitten open, half his brain exposed while he keeps fighting. Giant Man keeps prisoners locked away just so he can snack on them later. It only escalates. Hulk gorges on flesh until his stomach bursts, then heals and keeps eating. The infected Avengers and X-Men gang up on Galactus, devour him alive, and absorb his cosmic power, becoming zombie gods who move on to consume entire planets. The series struck a nerve. It was disgusting, hilarious, and terrifying all at once. Fans who loved superhero escapism were suddenly watching their favorite icons descend into cannibalistic madness. It quickly spun off into multiple sequels, crossovers with Army of Darkness, and even a cult following that turned the undead versions of Spider-Man and Cap into staples of Marvel horror. Years later, Disney Plus gave audiences a tamer taste of the concept in What If, but the original Marvel Zombies was pure nightmare fuel. Gore, cannibalism, and heroes crossing the final line. Demon in a bottle. Long before Robert Downey Jr. turned Tony Stark into Marvel's Golden Boy, the comics stripped him bare in one of the most human stories ever told about a superhero. In 1979, Iron Man issues 120 to 128, written by David Michelinie and Bob Layton with art by John Romita Jr., delivered Demon in a Bottle, a storyline that confronted Stark's alcoholism head-on. You see, in the story, his armor malfunctions in public, he kills a foreign ambassador by mistake, and his enemies expose how fragile he really is beneath the billionaire persona. These failures push Stark deeper into the bottle until alcohol becomes his way of numbing the pressure of being Iron Man. The panels don't glamorize it. They show Stark sweating, irritable, isolated, lashing out at those around him. He alienates his friends, loses focus, and teeters on the edge of collapse. The title issue, Demon in a Bottle, ends with Stark at rock bottom, a hero staring into his drink, broken and alone. With the help of Bethany Cabe and Jarvis, he claws his way out, but the scars of addiction never leave him. For Marvel in the late 70s, this was groundbreaking. Comics were still shaking off the Comics Code Authority, which had long censored anything too real or too raw. Demon in a Bottle smashed that barrier, proving superheroes could wrestle with demons that no supervillain could match. The MCU teased hints of it in Iron Man 2, the party scene where Stark is drunk in the armor, but it never went all in. The real story is too messy, too vulnerable, and too adult for Disney's billion-dollar machine. In the comics, Tony Stark's biggest battle wasn't against Thanos or Mandarin, it was against himself. X-Men, God Loves, Man Kills. In 1982, Marvel published a standalone graphic novel under its new Marvel graphic novel line that cut straight to the heart of what the X-Men were always about: prejudice, persecution, and survival. Written by Chris Claremont with art by Brent Anderson, God Loves, Man Kills stripped away spandex spectacle and told a story that felt chillingly close to reality. The villain was Reverend William Stryker, a televangelist and military veteran who used religion as his weapon. Stryker believed mutants were abominations in God's eyes and launched a crusade to wipe them out. His army carried out public executions, spreading propaganda that turned fear into justification for genocide. The book opens with one of the most haunting scenes in X-Men history: two young mutants, a brother and sister, lynched by Stryker's men. Their bodies are left hanging as a warning. That single page made it clear this wasn't a typical superhero comic. Throughout the story, the X-Men are hunted, captured, and tortured. Magneto, usually the antagonist, even teams up with Xavier and his students to confront Stryker. The final showdown takes place in a televised debate where Stryker pulls a gun on Xavier live on air, exposing the true face of his extremism before being stopped. The impact was massive. God Loves, Man Kills is still considered one of the greatest X-Men stories ever told because it used mutants as a metaphor for racism, homophobia, and religious extremism in America. It was so powerful that parts of it were adapted into the 2003 film X2 X-Men United, though heavily toned down for audiences. Spider-Man: Kraven's Last Hunt. In 1987, J.M. DeMatteis and artist Mike Zeck delivered Kraven's Last Hunt, a Spider-Man story that stunned readers with how dark and psychological it was. This was a descent into obsession, madness, and death. The 6-issue saga begins with Kraven the Hunter, a longtime foe who had always fallen short of truly defeating Spider-Man. But in this story, Kraven finally gets what he's been chasing. He ambushes Peter, drugs him, and then buries him alive in a coffin. With Spider-Man out of the way, Kraven dons the black costume himself and takes to the streets to prove he can be the better Spider-Man. While Peter is trapped underground fighting for his life, Kraven brutally dismantles criminals and even captures Vermin, a villain Spider-Man had struggled against. It's Kraven's twisted way of showing the world and himself that he has surpassed his rival. 2 weeks later, Spider-Man claws his way out of the grave in one of the most iconic splash pages in comic history. He confronts Kraven, but there's no climactic battle. Kraven doesn't fight back. Instead, he declares his mission complete. He's proven his superiority, and with nothing left to pursue, Kraven takes his own life with a rifle. The ending left readers shaken. A Spider-Man story had never gone this far into psychological territory or pushed one of his villains into such a disturbing resolution. Decades later, it's still hailed as one of the greatest Spider-Man arcs ever published. Siege. By 2010, Marvel had Norman Osborn sitting at the top of the world. After the events of Secret Invasion, he was handed control of national security, running HAMMER and leading the so-called Dark Avengers. His power grab hit its breaking point in Siege, a 4-issue crossover by Brian Michael Bendis and Olivier Coipel. When Osborn set his sights on Asgard, the setup was pure spectacle. Asgard was hovering above the plains of Oklahoma, a golden city floating over small-town America. Osborn saw it as a threat to his rule, so he rallied his forces to invade. He had Ares, the Sentry, and his squad of villainous heroes marching under his command. Thor and the real Avengers had to defend Asgard in what quickly became a war zone. The moment that scarred readers came when the Sentry, Marvel's unstable powerhouse, completely lost control. In the middle of the battle, he turned on Ares, ripping the god of war apart in a scene so graphic it shocked even longtime Marvel fans. Limbs were torn, blood splattered, and the battlefield froze as everyone realized the Sentry was no longer an ally. He was a catastrophe. From there, things spiraled. The Sentry transformed into the Void, his darker persona, unleashing destruction on Asgard until the Avengers were forced to put him down for good. Siege closed Osborn's reign and reset the stage for Marvel's heroic age, but the lasting image was the Sentry's meltdown. House of M. In 2005, Marvel handed Brian Michael Bendis the keys to rewrite reality itself. The result was House of M, an 8-issue crossover that pushed Scarlet Witch to the breaking point and delivered one of the most devastating twists in comic history. It all begins with Wanda Maximoff unraveling. After losing her children and enduring breakdown after breakdown, she becomes too dangerous to ignore. The Avengers and X-Men debate the unthinkable, whether she should be killed to protect the world. Before a decision is made, Wanda rewrites existence. In an instant, Earth transforms into the House of M, a world where mutants rule and humans live as the oppressed minority. Magneto is king, mutants thrive, and every hero's deepest wish has been granted. The story plays out like a dreamscape. Peter Parker wakes up married to Gwen Stacy. Captain America is an old man who retired without ever being frozen. Wolverine is the only one who remembers reality, and he becomes the spark that rallies heroes to confront Wanda. As cracks form in her fabricated paradise, the truth becomes impossible to ignore. The climax comes when Wanda, broken and resentful, utters 3 words that change Marvel forever: no more mutants. With that, nearly 1 million mutants lose their powers overnight, leaving only around 200 across the globe. It was a massacre without blood, a single sentence that reshaped Marvel's X-Men comics for years. The fallout was enormous. Entire mutant teams disappeared, beloved characters were powerless, and Scarlet Witch went from Avenger to pariah, a tragic figure defined by grief and destruction. And that's it. Now to you, if Disney ever decided to go all in and adapt one of these nightmares word for word, which story do you think would completely break audiences and maybe even the entire MCU itself? Comment down below as you leave a like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more amazing videos like this one.